I'm going to share screen. Now I'm going to play the current screen. And I hope you're all seeing the Geneva Conventions at 75.
Yes.
Okay. So this is an article from The Economist just showing the increasing challenge of adhering to the Geneva Conventions with the way warfare is going. You know, you have all these non-state actors like Hamas, Al-Qaeda before them, but also you've got the new technology, you've got the drones, and so it's going to be harder and harder to follow the old Geneva Conventions. They'll probably have to be rewritten, and we see that currently in the asymmetric war between the Hamas terrorists and a state. Speaking of Gaza, so there's some estimates are 38-1, and the question is that proportional? Proportionality is one of the measures according to international law. Homer's just joined us. Welcome, Homer.
Thank you.
So I've been in communication with Yasmini. You remember she came and visited us and gave a session on her biography, which is interesting. She has a Palestinian father, and she identifies Palestinian. But without going over all that again, I've been in dialogue with her, and that's why she came and joined us. And we had a 3-hour conversation, and she was pretty distraught. But she's in a better place now, and she has the sense that people are listening to Palestinians now, and this is something to her. She makes the point that in her estimation, Palestinians have been treated as exceptions to laws and human rights, and even speech. She finds examples around the world of Palestinians not having free speech. And taking the Palestinian point of view, of course, she is very sensitive to what she calls Zionist propaganda, and she has approved what I'm saying here today. I'm going to by her, kind of extracted from our conversations and our emails. So to her, and I'll next time we sit down and meet, I'll make the exception that the problem is the Jews were an exception as well. And if we're going to take a balanced view of this, that's got to be on the table. And if we go back in history, yeah, we've done the history of Jews over the last few years, and we know how devastating the Crusades were for Jews in Europe. In Europe specifically, of course, in the Holy Land, even worse. The Crusaders targeted Jews who had been working together with Arabs until the Crusaders showed up. And then within Europe, especially many of us are familiar with Great Britain, Bob in particular. And so he knows the history of pogroms in London, Lincoln, and York. I think I showed some slides. We visited the tower in York that was just the site of what was back then called a Holocaust. And then all this culminated in the World War II Holocaust. The problem in the Holy Land was, from the Palestinian point of view, was the Balfour Doctrine of the colonial powers that promised a homeland. But notice it was a homeland. It wasn't a nation. And when I went through reviewing the history, there were binational idealists, one of them from the Bay Area. One of them from the Bay Area. So let's just review that. There's some things I think are worth reviewing. And this is from Michael Oren's history. Michael Oren is an Israeli, but he's also a very good historian who can put on a historian hat. And he wrote this book. And this is before he got really involved in Israeli politics. He served in the IDF. He's been in the cabinet of Israel. But this book is very fair, and it's really about the foreign policy of the United States towards the Middle East. That's just a hell of a book. And it starts with the Barbary pirates and Thomas Jefferson. And yes, so with the Barbary pirates, we had a foreign policy involving the Middle East. But it was in particular when he gets to the 1920s, and there was a binational movement of Jews in Palestine. Remember, I went over this, and I want to go over it again, especially as I prepared to talk to Yasmini again. These were enlightened idealists, and from the standpoint of where we are today, they may have been the realists. The local Jewish personality. Oh, Sonia's here, Rudy. This is Rudy's mother coming in. Hello, Sonia. Glad you could join us. So you may remember Judah Leon Magnus was born in Oakland and became a rabbi in our Oakland. He became influenced by Zionism, maybe not exactly a Zionist, but he was influenced by them, and he predicted in 1948, when Israel was created, that even if they defeated the Arabs, it would experience a never-ending series of wars with the Arabs. Oh my God. So sometimes idealists are realists. And in this case, he wasn't as a nobody. He was dean of the Hebrew University in Jerusalem at the time. And he had enough clout to meet with George Marshall and encourage him to impose sanctions on both sides and to not allow Israel to become a state. This is someone from Oakland. And then when I reviewed the 1920s, I always just was struck by this headline. I keep throwing it up. But look at this, the Prince of Hejaz. That's Prince Faisal, played by Alec Guinness in Lawrence of Arabia. He was going to welcome the Zionist as of 1918. And he assured his cousins of Arab cooperation in Palestine. So here you had the Abraham Accords 100 years ago. So who were these Israeli idealists that believed in a binational state? Henrietta Zold, you remember, American-born, a founder of Hadassah, so she was a Zionist, but she co-founded the political partner, the party with Magnus called IHUD, dedicated to a binational solution. They were a political party, and her partner was our own Judah Leon Magnus, Oakland rabbi, born, well, he was born in San Francisco, but and was part of the pacifist movement of World War One. And he was part of the Reform Judaism. As I said before, he was at Hebrew University and its president for 13 years. And he was Henrietta's a partner. And there, believe it or not, in Berkeley, walking along the streets of Berkeley, here we are, Alston Way, so it's not that far from Berkeley Rep, is the Magnus Library, Jewish art collection and life. So I still haven't been there since I gave this lecture a couple of months ago, but it's on my list. This is back to Yasmini. She tackles this question of America's image in the Middle East. And the statement that Israel is America's only friend, she thinks that's kind of deceptive, and she points out, and this is true, that America did not have an enemy in the Middle East. You go back to that history book that I was just referring to, Fantasy, Faith, American Foreign Policy. We had built universities in Lebanon, the American universities, in Egypt, in Istanbul. We were in good standing with the Saudis because of Christian missionaries, not because they were Christian, but because they provided medical care to the Saud family. And so now this is Ismani's words. I'm not going to pull her punches. Murderous, belligerent bully with no respect for human rights and laws of any kind. Ismani's a lawyer. And I know this rubs some of us the wrong way. And I know the ICC indictments, International Criminal Court indictments, and the International Criminal Court, that's South Africa bought the case before them, and they've issued admonishments Israel on the conduct of the war in Gaza. This has given Yasmini comfort, some comfort. She's a lawyer. There's a process. Nobody's been found guilty, but there is a process, and she is comforted by that. And the law is meant to give comfort in the process, not necessarily in the outcome always. Yasmini recommends that we all this website, the Palestinian Exception. I did that, and this is what it looks like. I said in the beginning the ratio of 38 to 1. She would like to at least put in play 200 to 1 from some of her sources. Who knows? But this is the Palestinian exception. Okay. Discussion. If I do want to do Ukraine, and I do want to get Kamala, but I'll take a pause, take a breath. Okay, on to Ukraine. So we've talked a lot about the Kerch Bridge. Here it is, and it's just a matter of time before that bridge falls. The Battle of Azov is being won by Ukraine. This is the Sea of Azov here, and it's being won by Ukraine. As is the Battle of the Black Sea. The Russian fleet has lost a third of their ships. I know I'm repeating myself, but it's so important. This harbor in Sevastopol that Catherine the Great promoted and built, is no longer a safe place for Russian warships. They've all left and gone over to the Russian mainland. And this is an abrupt change after 10 years of Russia controlling Crimea. And the warships have also left the Sea of Azov. So this is the Kerch Bridge, and then this is a series of ferries, railroad ferries that also get good across. And the Ukrainians have removed that as well. I've got in another slide, I'll show you a map of that. And so this was Putin's holy land. This was his whole reason for being aggressive 10 years ago. The Azov Sea. And it's important now because you see this Russian land bridge that goes across here, and they had and were resupplied by ships from the Azov Sea. Well, they don't have that anymore. They don't. They have now a hostile sea at their back, and that's important. So this all repeats the same, but maybe just as important as their land bridge is Rostov-on-Don, the logistic hub of the entire Russian war machine. And where is the estuary of the Don River as it enters the Sea of Azov? And so here's a wide map, and there's Rostov-on-Don is marked with a heart, indicating that whoever made this map sees it as a very important port. There you go. The Sea of Azov, Rostov-on-Don. And now it is looking out on a hostile sea. You see Sochi here this is also close to Putin's heart, right? This is where he held the Winter Olympics, right here, not far from the Abkhazia that he seized from Georgia. The drones have taken out that railroad ferry as well. So all that remains is the Kerch Bridge, and it's just a matter of time that vital supply lines for Russian troops in Crimea are going to be cut off. And this is a picture of blurry, albeit, of the port of the rail ferry, and it's just 7 miles from the Kerch Bridge. The last railroad ferry the Russians had in that area. And so this gives a little more detail, maybe too much detail, but there are pipelines as well. And then this is the Kerch Bridge itself, and the railroad lines here. All right, so it doesn't take imagination to foresee how the Kerch Bridge is going to go down. Ukraine has already shot down Russian aircraft above the Sea of Azov. They control the Black Sea. An airdrop of surface drones into Azov. Missiles from Ukraine to the north. And even Rostov itself might not be safe. You know, the United States limits the use of missiles to attack Russia. They don't allow them to be used to attack deep to Russia. Only staging areas for the attack on Kharkov, for instance. But there are no limits on the use of these missiles for what is legitimately Ukrainian land recognized internationally as Crimea is ever since 1992. They make the point that maritime victories are rarely felt immediately. It's not like the liberation of cities. And they give examples of Trafalgar and Midway, naval battles that prove definitive, but weren't appreciated until the historians looked at what was important. But the Ukrainians are gaining confidence from their victories, not just in the Black Sea, but now also in the Sea of Azov. The other thing that's giving them confidence is a Ukrainian drone strike took out a Russian supersonic bomber inside the Arctic Circle, over 1,000 miles from Ukraine. That's pretty impressive. Finally, this is in this week's edition. Yet another example of Ukraine's imaginative use of low tech to get around limitations. So Ukraine was limited on their radar, and they've worked out something they call human radar that has been surprisingly successful as an early warning system. What is it? It's a system that techies in Ukraine started working on 4 days after the invasion. And it's just an imaginative use of smartphone apps and artificial intelligence that allows any Ukrainian citizen to quickly report flying objects they see or hear. Acoustic detection also stunningly effective, and it's been enlarged to microphone networks positioned all across the Ukraine, and it's especially important for low flying drones. So I'll take a pause. Anybody have any questions or comments about Ukraine?
John, this is Harold. Acoustic detection, the Brits used it before they perfected their radar.
Oh, really?
These big stationary, like air trumpets, and they could figure out the sound of the aircraft approaching, and using triangulation, they could figure from what direction.
Oh, that's cool. You mentioned air trumpets. My neighbors gave me an air trumpet in the middle of COVID before I had a chance to go in and get a hearing aid that I so desperately needed. So I'm in proud possession of an ear trumpet. Yeah. Other comments? Thanks, Harold. So this is a incidental thing I stumbled on. We're all hearing about the Belarusian strongman Lukashenko, and they just caught a picture of this guy visiting Putin. Look at this. This guy is morbidly obese. So I don't know. I think he's an accident waiting to happen. And I'm looking for silver linings wherever I can find them. Okay, a bit more on the depressing side. The Kremlin is rewriting their version of Wikipedia. They're not coming up with a whole new Wikipedia. They're just going in there and editing what they don't like, not following Wikipedia rules. This is 1984 all over. And there's a new book out taking on the global brotherhood of despots. So autocrats has been one of our sub themes. I just wanted to give a brief update on. Gangsters in chief, how autocrats collaborate. So it's not just that they take over their own society, but now they're working with each other. And of course, talking about drones in Ukraine, Iran has been providing it. These guys have no overlap in ideology whatsoever. They're all just spoilers that are angry about the United States past dominance, and they're just trying to spoil the international settlement. And so this is the Atlantic student cover story: How Democracy is Losing the New Propaganda War by Ann Applebaum. So you can read that article talking about all the autocrats that we've been talking about, and how they're making common cause with the MAGA Republicans and their isolationist, nationalist foreign policy. To decredit liberalism and attack freedom around the world. But the cover story in the article is just an intro for her new book called Autocracy. And she is on a book tour, so it's not hard to find a podcast with her being interviewed about her book. And she, I think, is married to a Polish diplomat. She's been, along with Timothy Snyder, a constant advocate for Ukraine throughout the invasion. Andrew Sullivan, Jonah Goldberg on the book tour. Those were the podcasts I listened to, and she makes the point that they're even abusing tools for fighting financial crime. Yeah, Bob.
Yeah, I just want to add that Anne Applebaum's husband, I think several will know this. It's not just a Russian diplomat. He was Poland's defense minister, foreign minister, member of the European Parliament. And if you ever get a chance to listen to him, he is the wittiest, has a driest humor in English of many an interviewee. He's a lot of fun and very smart.
Oh, okay, good. What's his name?
Radoslav Sikorsky.
Sikorsky, yeah, Sikorsky. Okay, thanks, Bob. So anyway, these strong men are targeting dissidents. We all know about how they're clamping down on foreign NGOs. But even in the Philippines, there was a Philippine charity that was targeted because some of its participants had said bad things about Duterte. All right, so our friend Fareed Zakaria, he's reliable for us to touch base with, and he's touched base with a look at Biden's legacy, both in foreign policy and domestic. Let's do foreign policy first, since we're on Ukraine. And he makes the point that Biden has strengthened America's alliances, and not just NATO, but also in the Indo-Pacific. Yes, Harold. Your hand up, Harold?
I was going to let you finish praising Biden before I dumped the Obama quote on you, which is never estimate Joe Biden's ability to F things up.
Harold, you interrupt me whenever you want. I enjoy the break. So the at least in bolstering up the alliances after Trump, I think even Harold will concede he did that pretty well. And it's not just us that think so. Fareed reported on opinion polls around the world. And most countries rate Biden much more favorably than they did Trump. Let's start at the top. No surprises here. Of course, Sweden, Germany, European countries, Japan, of course, Korea, of course, France, even Mexico welcomes an activist American foreign policy. Okay, no surprises. Australia, Kenya, and then you go on down the list. Almost all these countries, Biden more than Trump. When you get to Italy, it's starting to get a little close. South Africa, a little close. Ghana, African countries, Greece, Nigeria. But you have to go down pretty far until you start getting ties. And Hungary is the only one that, and Tunisia, I don't know why, ranked Trump higher. So it's also world opinion. Now I'm going to turn to domestic. Did anybody want to comment on Biden's foreign policy before? So here's the link that Fareed made for me, the connection. I wasn't thinking Biden in Piketty, but I am now because Fareed makes the same point that Ramsey made a few weeks ago, that since Reagan, the federal government has refrained from any infrastructure investment. And the reason for that is they didn't have any money. Why was that? Because they cut taxes. And we saw and we'll see again, because I'm gonna throw up just a few of Ramsey's slides from last a few weeks ago, that the tax cuts were really terrible, and Biden has reversed that trend. the tax cuts, I think no one will disagree, benefited the rich disproportionately. And this is Fareed's phrase, private opulence and public decay. That's something Piketty could have said quite easily, probably did say it. We hand-wringing over debt, but it's those tax cuts, and of course our foreign wars that have created the federal debt. And Trump was part of that. No matter how much he talks about being for the little guy, he contributed to the decrease of taxes on the rich. So a few of Ramsey's slides just to review and put it in the context of what Fareed's saying and what Biden has done, and it fits pretty well. It also fits pretty well with, and thank you, Bob Oxenborough, for digging this up. It was at the back of this week's Economist, and Bob pulled it to the front for me. Piketty and Kamala's father have a lot in common. The Economist labels Kamala's father as a combative Marxist. And when looking at growth, looking at wealth distribution, Piketty's points. And this is his opus. This is his book, Kamala's Father, Capital Accumulation and Income Distribution. And this is, I promised Bruce I'd mention Stanford, and here we are. He reached the heights of his career at Stanford. I will be talking when I do Kamala's bio is Iko in the early 60s walked around the Berkeley campus, probably rubbing elbows with Kamala's father and mother, who were grad students in the 60s when Iko and I were there. Okay, so what is his thesis? I am not going to get into the nitty-gritty of Marxist economic thought. I'll just throw out a few quotes from The Economist that he was prosecutorial, which is interesting, rhymes with Kamala's career, a terrier-like grip on blind spots and misguided assumptions of the mainstream, like Piketty. But he also, in the lighter vein, admonished his daughter for stereotyping Jamaicans when she admitted to smoking marijuana. Anyway, a high praise from The Economist. He's a clear writer, which is hard to do when you're a Marxist writing a Marxist theory. Familiar, a simple equation that Ramsey spent quite a while making clear to us. I won't go back into the details of that argument, but Kamala's father made similar arguments with a little bit more complexity. It's interesting, he dedicated his book to Kamala and her sister Maya, and he sees the limits of profit-seeking capitalists to set the direction of an economy. Well, that's become pretty common now. There's a growing consensus. I mean, if you think about it, that's what Franklin Delano Roosevelt was all about, and we've been talking about mixed economies ever since John Maynard Keynes. He did. Kamala's father focused specifically on inequality in growth, uneven development, and then he gets into some more esoteric economic concepts like multiple equilibrium, and he tries to make it simple using the metaphor of blueprints. But I'm not going to get into that detail. It's just that there is a connection, and his background is no doubt going to be used in the campaign. He's unashamedly a Marxist, so there's no dodging that, and he'll no doubt be labeled a communist. He hastens to add that he doesn't go along with all the Marxist theory about colonialism. He makes the point that he doesn't. We're living under any kind of colonial rule, particularly black people in America. He said they wouldn't fare any better under a black capitalist than they would under a white capitalist. So he's clear about that. And he's in his dotage, he has become more moderate, as I think all of us are, advising the Jamaican government, recommending fiscal restraint, discipline, focus on crime and exports. But he's left a daughter to carry on his work, maybe the greatest part of his legacy. But it does point to a growing consensus that the Economist highlights in the review of his book, that capitalism is insufficient to improve living standards. And you get this horseshoe theory of the political spectrum. The political spectrum is not a straight line, it's a horseshoe, and the far ends of it could approximate an inch closer together. And that's what we see with Bidenomics on one end of the horseshoe and the more interventionist nationalism of Trump's advisors. They all agree an unfettered free market is not it's no longer seen as the answer, as Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher did, as Alan Greenspan did. So this is we're at a moment where there's this unexpected consensus. Yes, Harold.
I think you're conflating economic theories with political theories, and I'm not sure that's a good way to look at it. India, since they got independence from the British Raj, started out as a bunch of socialists / communists, and they didn't get anywhere for 40 or 50 years till they finally realized that a government-directed economy wasn't getting them where they needed to go. And I can't think of any communist or Marxist economy that has gone anywhere. Even China stopped being Marxist. They unleashed the power of capitalism to get where they are now.
I think
my question is, why are all the Democrats suddenly anti-capitalist? Do they not understand economics or what?
Well, I don't think they are anti-capitalist. I think what the concept is that it's unfettered capitalism, and we're talking about a mixed economy. And I know I'm mixing in politics.
Well, we haven't had unfettered capitalism for quite a while, since maybe the robber barons of 150 years ago.
Yes.
We have a mixed economy, but somehow when you're running for political office, you become a Marxist somehow and anti-capitalist. It's crazy.
I think if Ramsey were here, he'd make the point that beginning in the 70s, history is zigs and zags, and absolutely FDR corrected unfettered capitalism for sure. But then there was a zag that resulted in the inequality that we're seeing now. And if Ramsey were here, and I think I'll have a slide again that shows a lot of things happened in the 70s with Reagan and Thatcher, and that we had a lot of backsliding. And that's when inequality grew. And I don't
Okay, I understand the argument, and the rich got richer and the poor didn't keep up or whatever, but that's political. That's not you're talking about an economic system. Capitalism is an economic system. If you want to raise taxes, that's fine. That's not anti-capitalist. That's not necessarily Marxist. It's raising taxes.
Let me try this. So the metaphor is the engine, and Piketty says this, that capitalism is a great motor, and he's in favor of capitalism. So don't put words in our mouths. He is in favor. Piketty himself is in favor of capitalism. It's just that the yield, the rewards of it, need to sometimes be redistributed in such a way that the surplus goes to investment, infrastructure, human capital improvements, mainly education. And Piketty makes this perfectly clear. Capitalism is a great engine. Okay, we're going to move on. And this is what Ramsey says about this new consensus. Ramsey says that it looks like we've got a clear roadmap, a consensus of the left and the right, that there needs to be continued refinement of capitalism, a transfer of surplus to the public sector for infrastructure, as Biden has done, in education. And he says we're not going to see it, but our grandkids might see actually the full synthesis of what we've been talking about. And now fewer zigzags, maybe a zag back for a corrective to the huge tax cuts of Reagan, Bush, and Trump. And Pickett and Ramsey says Marx may have got the details wrong, but the basic thesis is exactly right. So, and some of this could be assisted by AI. This is one of Ramsey's slides. So this is a theoretician within the Biden advisors that has been responsible for industrial policy, which is a new name for the government helping to pick targets, not winners, but at least targets. So that's the Bidenomics. But all this talk we've had about China and Xi, and is he committed to the private sector? But what about these state-owned enterprises? And it turns out that he's trying to find the correct balance between the private sector and government setting the goals. So it's kind of the same kind of struggle to find the right balance. But even socialism with Chinese characteristics is capitalism. I think everybody agrees that entrepreneurism is the engine that drives everything.
John, I hate to interrupt again, but the Chinese economy is in most trouble because of the state-owned enterprises. They got these big factories churning out more goods than than the market can absorb, and they're losing money. They're going, they're in the hole.
I agree. I've pointed
So
that.
that's the government trying to run the economy.
Harold, I agree. I've pointed that out. Okay, I'm just going to throw up some quick slides from Piketty that Ramsey's already done to underline what happened in the 1970s. So here we are, World War I, things even out. I'm not going to get into the details of these slides, but they just show that there was a change in the 1970s. Income inequality, for sure, started up in the 1970s, more in America than EU. And these are from chapters we when we read the book at Carol's place. Low those 10 years ago, we would spend a week reading this stuff. And the growth of the top 1% as their share of wealth. No one disputes this, and it was all from the 1970s, all from the 1970s onward. This grotesque maldistribution of wealth. United States is among the most unequal. We see that Sweden and Finland, Norway, they have capitalism. It's just that they share the benefits of the capitalism and redistribute it with transfer programs. So no one is fighting capitalism. Global inequality, I just had to throw this in. This is the distribution of global wealth among continents, and you can see no wonder the global South is unhappy with the current system. Again, Piketty's point, that he said 10% of the money disappears from the earth and is hidden in tax shelters. He said 10%. Then Ramsey found an article in The Economist to recommend, it could be 21% of the world is the wealth has disappeared. It hasn't gone to Mars, but it's disappeared. So a wealth tax didn't work out. There's anticipating Harold's objections. It certainly didn't work out in France, and it's hard to do. But this is the period of the golden period from World War II, the end of World War II, where there was this very equitable distribution of wealth, and it had different names in different countries. The United States, it was the American dream. That all of a sudden there is a consensus that corporations and the wealthy don't pay their fair share of taxes. That's a consensus. And we're talking about healthcare, same thing. There's consensus. It's just that our political system is so bad that we're not able to institute the consensus. And I'm going to have an example of, you go in a little bit more detail about the border. There was a compromise on the border in February, and you remember Trump stopped it. So there is consensus if we can just get our political system to respond to it. Biden's specific accomplishments, infrastructure, child care, manufacturing, energy. This is Fareed. Fareed says the transportation infrastructure, the largest upgrade since the 1950s. I remember seeing a report of an American Association of Engineers that graded American infrastructure on 16 spectra. One example would be ports, the other would be rails, the other would be bridges, and there were 13 others, and generated an overall grade of a D plus with American infrastructure. So you engineers, please, maybe next week you could summarize that report and make sure I got it right. Anyway, 56,000 projects already launched. Green energy, we talked about that when we talked about the solar revolution. This expanded child tax credit, right, which is a redistribution of tax to people that need more money. They get a tax credit. Very effective in reducing child poverty during COVID, 46%, but now the Republicans refuse to give Biden a win. So 15 million jobs, the most ever for any president in one term. Unemployment, this is free. This isn't me. Under 4% for over 2 years, the longest run since the 1960s. Black labor force participation higher than white. Larry Summers himself, who's been a critic of Biden, says remarkable, outperformed the economic forecast. Yes, Bob. Bob.
It's an undeniable fact that the 15 more million people are employed today than on January 20th, 2021. But I think the course of the pandemic under any administration would have given rise to a return of most of the jobs that existed in March 2020. So I think it's a somewhat disingenuous claim to say you created 15 million jobs, but still, it's been a great economic performance.
Okay, I accept that modification.
Well,
Homer.
maybe so, but the fact remains that no Western economy has performed as well as ours. We all suffered COVID, and if that return of 15 million new jobs was simply recovery from COVID, it would be seen in other countries as well. And we stand out. And we're only average or below in inflation compared to other developed economies after COVID. This is a point I keep wishing people would make. Don't just talk about the fact that we have inflation or that employment was expected to return. Compare us to how other governments and other similar economies have done.
Okay. Anyone else? Good comment. We're almost, I think we'll make this the last slide. This is
Hey, John, it's David. I just got, I don't know if people saw the New York Times editorial on don't believe Trump, check the facts, but there were about 10 graphs on last Sunday's, I think the back of the editorial page that talked a lot about this, about unemployment, about economic recovery, but it might be worth looking at those.
okay. Thanks, David.
Mm-hmm.
I think this would be Ramsey's last point, and we'll call it a day. He wants to tax unrealized capital gains because there's kind of a tax accountant dodge of paying taxes, and if he could institute this among the richest Americans, it would help a lot. And it has been found to be constitutional. I think there's some other minor things I don't know, but it's called the billionaire minimum income tax. And I think this is Fareed's final point: the return of sanity, decency, and dignity. And Biden feels he's been underestimated all his life. Maybe that's why he hung on so desperately. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. But in any case, that's it. Further discussion.
Well, you commented on Mr. Harris's disapproval of his daughter for admitting she smoked marijuana as enhancing a Jamaican stereotype. Makes me think of Pato Banton. I do not smoke the coke. I only smoke Sensimilla.
I smoked, but I didn't inhale. Okay, other comments? All right, hearing none. Wait.
I guess we're saying goodbye.
I guess I have a comment, one comment, and it's about, one of the things that Harris and the fact that what we're kind of bringing up is, where is all of, obviously there's money backing her. And the question is that, is the money just gone away from Biden and therefore just dumping him totally on? So in a sense, is she is she a pawn in the hands of kings? Where's what's going on if it's not just her that's out doing all these great things? It's somebody behind the scenes that's pulling the strings. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, but I don't have an answer. Above my pay grade.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's, yeah, I'm seeing that from several different sources, and just kind of like, is this kind of just all a staged thing about how she has actually come into power, in a sense that all of a sudden the money just kind of like took it away from Biden, and okay, here's it's not an open election. It's now going to be she's the anointed person from who's anointing her.
I'm not sure I understand your point. She legally and properly has the funds for the Biden-Harris campaign that was raised before. That's been made clear. And what is it, $180 million she raised in the past week? 60% is from small donors who are new to donating. I mean, that's the figure. I don't know about the other 40%. Maybe they're from previous and established donors.
Well, that's
but
the
contrast that to $45 million a month from Elon Musk to Donald Trump. I mean, I'm not sure what point you're making here.
Well, the question, I guess the point I don't really understand yet is that where is there's somebody behind. The question is there somebody behind the scenes? Is she just basically another pawn in the hands of kings? Who's pulling the strings behind her? Is there you'll see this come up. This is the conspiracy theory, and I don't have the answer.
It's George Soros for sure. That's what they're going to tell us.
Well, the thing is that Johnny had a guy in his medical school class who is a real Marxist. Remember Billy Steinsmith?
I do. Yeah.
And he saw me working very, very hard to get Obama reelected. And he said, he came over to me and he said, Aiko, he's just like all the rest of them. You know, and I'm not saying he's like all the rest of them, but he sure didn't arrest anybody for 2008. So maybe we're getting more of the same, but in a more kind of muted tone.
Well, what I want is this consensus that the economist points out and Ramsey endorses of both ends of the spectrum, that will get less polarization, and there won't be anybody any place to go for people with a lot of money that want to influence stuff. We'll see.
Just-
Okay, bye.
Bye bye.
They can still go to the Caymans.
Yeah. There you go.
Sure.
And smoke marijuana.
And smoke marijuana.